I'm
How is
good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I appreciate you coming here. Yeah, we were supposed to kick off the day starting off, but it didn't start off the way I wanted it to start off. But it's okay. It's all right. It's good. So I appreciate you coming here. I appreciate you taking the time to be here with me. So do tell, who are you, Mr. Jeffrey? What exactly do you do?
That's a loaded question. So what do I do? Well, I do a lot,
Uh oh.
and I do a lot for a lot of people, and that's what my passion is. My passion is working with people. But I was born and bred in Philadelphia. My name's Jeff Abramowitz. I'm the director of reentry services at Jev's Human Services here in Philadelphia. Wasn't always that way. Actually came up here today and took an Uber from town and realized that I was a block and a half away from a place I used to work. And Community Learning Center, I'll give a shout out to them, is at
Shout out.
63rd Street on between Race and Vine, and they're an adult literacy agency in Philadelphia. They help adults learn math and reading and get their GED so they can be successful. Kind of cool stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. What exactly is Jev?
So Jev's Human Services is probably one of the largest social service agencies in Philadelphia, and we service and help about 30,000 plus people in Philadelphia. And you don't know us as Jev's, but you know us because
Oh.
we operate the Career Link at Suburban Station in Philadelphia,
Ah.
and we have an Act 1 and Act 2 methadone clinics in North Philadelphia, Broad and Olney, and also at Fifth and Berks. And you know us because we have all these diversion programs where we help young people that are coming through the criminal justice system, and we divert them into places where they can be successful and get a trade and a profession. And we also own Orleans Technical College up in Northeast Philadelphia. And then we have a whole host of programs like The Choice is Yours, which is a diversion program in Philly, and all these other great programs that work with people, take them where they are, and then we try to help them find a pathway to success. Jeff's slogan is "We make hope happen," and we
Mm.
do. We do. So that's kind of the short of what we do. We also do a lot of reentry work. We have a contract with the Philadelphia Prison Department of Prisons where we're working behind the walls, helping men and women get educated so that they come home, they have a career opportunity, and give them some trade training. So there's a whole host of trades, including computer technology trades, that they can learn while they're away at prison. So when they come home, we can help them.
That sounds very interesting. Uh,
It is.
you know what? Yeah, because a lot of them, when they come out of the prison, it's like, okay, what do I do next? I'm sort of kind of lost, especially if they've been in prison or incarcerated for extremely long time. And it's like, I need resources. So, how do you get these people who are incarcerated or being released?
So the men and women that are coming from the prison system often come to us from the parole officers. They come from the prison system. They come from the agencies we work with in Philadelphia that say, you know what, we have a group that can help you. So the program's called Looking Forward Philadelphia. It's at Temple University, and we're there Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays with a full staff. We have job developers. We have resource coordinators. We have even an academic instructor that will work with you to try to help you get whatever it is you need. Too often in the reentry world, we work and men and women come home and we don't really ask the right question. The right question is, what do you need? What do you need right now, and how can we help you? You know, they come back into our communities and we don't do enough. We don't do enough to give them some guidance. And the reality is, if we ask the hard questions, sometimes we're going to get some different answers than we expected. Oftentimes we're going to get, you know what, I need a trans pass to get around on septus so I can find a job. I need to get a resume. I need to learn how to use a computer. I need some training. I want to be a welder. I need food. I need clothing. I don't have any clothing for a job interview. When we ask the questions of what people need when they come home, you know, that's where it has to start. And we also have to think that the reality is they may need things that we can't always provide, that we have to get special attention for. Men and women that come home often have addiction issues, whether it's alcohol or drugs, and we can't think that just getting a job makes that go away. It doesn't. I mean, we have to treat the problem, and we have to really look at it very holistically. what are the things that people need in order to survive in society. And the one thing we know for sure is that a minimum wage isn't it. You can't just take someone that comes home from prison and give them a minimum wage job and think that they're going to be successful and that they're going to be able to survive off that. In fact, I challenge people today to really try put a minimum wage salary away in your bank account and try and survive off of that for a week, and then throw one or two children in that mix and try and feed them and pay your car insurance and your rent and your electric and everything else. It's almost impossible. One of the big things that has to change in our country now is we have to up our minimum wage across the board for everyone.
You know what? You speak of minimum wage, and I remember when this big stink came about it, and of course, those in the White House were against it because their thing is if you up the ante on the minimum wage, what happens is everything else is going to increase. I found interesting is that well, we were asking us middle class poor people were asking for a fair share and making a few extra more dollars rather than having to work 2 to 3 more extra jobs. They didn't like that idea, but they didn't have an issue with giving themselves a pay raise. I
Yeah,
thought that was very interesting.
it often works that way.
Yeah.
There's a saying, the rich get richer. But the reality is that minimum wage today just doesn't cut it. We have to increase. I know Governor Wolf has made a pledge to try and do what he can to raise the minimum wage in Pennsylvania, as many states have. And I think a lot of companies you're seeing now are stepping up and doing it even though it's not required. Companies like Amazon and Walmart and some of the other big companies are stepping up and saying, you know what, we got to increase our wages because we have to make it sustainable. So when men and women were coming home from prison, a sustainable wage is a big deal, and that's how people are going to survive. But more importantly, it's finding that pathway that's going to make them happy. Often we think about somebody's return to prison as, just getting back on their feet. But if you get back on your feet and you just go into an entry-level position and you stay there, well, the chances are that you're probably not going to stay there real long.
Yeah.
People come to me all the time and they say, Mr. A, I need a job. And I always say to them, I can't give you a job. And they get all bent out of shape and they start, giving me a little toot. And I can't give you a job because if I give you a job and I put you in a fast food place where you're not happy and you're frying fries, they're going to be back to me in a few weeks and say, Mr. A, I can't do that. That's ridiculous. I got to do something I really like to do. So when you come to me, we got to talk about what's your passion, what drives you, what gets you going. Because if you can really find what gets you going in the morning, what makes you happy, then you're going to get out of bed a little bit easier. And you're going to enjoy going to work. And you're going to work a little harder. And you're going to try and move up the ladder at your employer. And that's how you're going to become successful.
That is true. Passion, there's a difference between passion and just liking or admiring. Everyone... When it just seems like when you have this passion, like you said, like you just can't wait to get up. You can't wait to get to work. You can't wait to get things going. Put him in that position to where after a while it's like, okay, this is boring. I'm not liking this. I'm not feeling this. Here comes the excuses. I overslept. I missed the bus. Then I might as well just miss a couple of days from work, and to the point where a couple of weeks from now, I just quit. So, like you said, and then they come back to you and say, hey, find me something else, so rather than putting you in that situation, let's just nip all of that and just find you something that you're passionate about, because that'll keep you there.
It's going to keep you happy is what it's going to do.
Happy. Because when you're happy, co-workers are happy, supervisors happy, families happy, and of course the guests or customers, they're happy because it shows, you're vibrant about it, you're eager, you can't wait to help. But
it does, and it makes a difference at work too. I do a lot of work placing people, working trying to get them a career opportunity, and I work with Aramark. And Aramark's got a great philosophy. Their philosophy is, we could teach anybody to do just about anything, but the thing we can't teach you is we can't teach you how to smile. Which is true. You can't teach people how to smile. You can't give them that special personality. But the reality is when you work for a company, that you're a reflection on that company. And when someone leaves that company, they're going to be thinking about you as much as they think of the company that just serviced them. So that's one of the most important things when you go to work and being happy is that understanding that you're a reflection on your employer, and the job you do is not only a reflection on you, but it's also a reflection on the company that you work for. And the more you can make the company realize your value and what you bring to the table and how much it helps the company, the better off that company is going to be. And let me tell you something, returning citizens and people that have been through our criminal justice system have value. Not only do they have a value sometimes that's far exceeds anyone that hasn't gone through the system. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the truth is that men and women that have been incarcerated and gone down, they understand what it's like not to have that freedom, and they appreciate those things and those opportunities that they have now because they were once taken away from them. So I know, we haven't talked about my story. So all right, but I think the reality for those men and women is that they have to there's a point in everyone's life where you have to say, I need to find my path. I'm ready. I need to find my purpose in life and what I want to do. And once you find that direction, you got to run with it and keep going.
Now, you know what? Passion. I'm incarcerated. Here, now I'm reading the news this morning about a young, not a young man, but a man who was released from prison after spending 28 years, falsely accused over a dream. I'm sitting up here like, this, did they say dream? Yeah, apparently a young lady had dreamt she had been raped by this young man. And from that dream, he spent 28 years in jail. Now, just so happened, they can't find the DNA anymore. It has magically disappeared. So the prosecutor said, we're not going to retry this case. He's a free man. And it's like the one thing he said is that we all take for granted freedom. And it's not that he didn't take it for granted. It's just, it's, we, we who have never been accused, falsely accused, take freedom more for granted than those who actually did the crime. Um, and then you had touched on, about, recidivism and crime and this passion. My thing is, for someone who's been incarcerated for whatever amount of time, and they, of course, over a period of time is like, especially if they didn't do it, I just want to get out. How do I convince you that I need to be out? I need to be free. It wasn't me. At the same time, when I am released, how do you get them to get this passion? Because I can't explain what they feel, what they're feeling. I can just imagine. And majority of them that have come out have always said the same thing. There's no hatred or bitterness.
Yeah, and it's whether you're exonerated and you're found not guilty, and there's an appeal that lets you out, or whether you've just done your time. When you come home, I think there's a real desire for people to want to move forward, to look forward, and not to look in the past. And unfortunately, had this discussion recently with somebody that had been a juvenile lifer that when you come home, the reality is that you're branded. You're branded a felon because society brands you that way. Everywhere you go and everything you do in our society today, you have that background that sticks with you. Whether you apply for a job, a driver's license, you travel, whatever it is, your criminal past stays with you. And we have to start changing that. But it really starts the first day that you go inside. And that's because, re-entry to me starts the day that you walk in, you're in that prison room, in that prison cell. If we don't do more to prepare the men and women that are behind the walls for when they come home, then what do we think is going to happen? I can't still understand why we don't have mandatory digital literacy in every prison in our country. Just explain to me why that's not possible. Because, we task people when they come home, you got to go find a job. Go over in the corner. There's a computer over there. I want you to get online and start applying for jobs on the internet. And that gentleman that's been 45 years is now looking at that computer wondering what it is, how to turn it on, how to download a resume for him. He doesn't even know where the keys are in order to bring up a resume or to create a resume. We need to be able to think about how we can prepare people. 95% of the men and women that are behind bars come home. 95%. So why don't we start educating them? Why don't we start teaching them and giving them a trade while they're away? Why don't we start teaching them computers and financial literacy? Why don't we start giving them skills so that when they come home, they're ready to make that next step to a career opportunity where they take responsibility and they can move on a career pathway so that they don't have to go back and start selling drugs on the street because that's all they knew from the life before. We need to start doing more inside our walls, but we also need to do a better job when they come home.
Let me ask you this question, because we all have a story. What got you into this thing?
So
You
I
seem
was
very passionate about this.
I am, but I'm also very transparent about where I've been. So I grew up in Philadelphia. I grew up in the Alny section of Philly, went to Central High School, and was always wanted to be a lawyer. Went through Central, went out to Ohio State for my undergrad, and then went to Michigan for law school, and found that my passion was for being a lawyer. Came home to Philadelphia and became a civil trial lawyer in Philadelphia, right at 15th and Market Street, and practiced for a little over 20 years. About 9 years ago, I caught a federal indictment, just made some horrible choices. Took responsibility very quickly for the decisions I made and the choices I made, and ended up getting sentenced to 5 years in the federal penitentiary. Haven't been home that long. Came home in September of 2015 and lived in a halfway house for almost a year. Just couldn't. Had I known what I was coming home to in Philadelphia, I would have stayed inside. I would have stayed inside. I lived in a halfway house in North Philadelphia at Liberty Management. It was at Lehigh and Germantown, and I couldn't survive. I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand why getting out of there to look for a job was like finding Willy Wonka's golden ticket. I couldn't understand why I struggled to eat a decent meal there.
Right.
And yet they had 25 vending machines of somebody making money off us. I couldn't understand why there were more drugs in my room and more overdoses in our building than some of the worst areas and challenged areas of Philadelphia in a halfway house.
In a halfway house.
So I couldn't understand it. And to this day, that facility's closed. But I was determined at that point. I was determined early on, even when I went inside, to figure out what this journey was about.
Right.
But I was even more determined when I came home to make a difference. So I got lucky. It brought in Lehigh. I went into a center. It was Community Learning Center, one of the satellites from here at on 63rd Street. And a lady said that I gave her my resume. And it kind of blew me off. So I went back the next week. I said, I'm still here, and I still need a job. Did you give my resume to your director? And she was a director. And she actually was laying her staff off because the state of Pennsylvania at the time had that budget freeze.
Right.
And they were laying off a lot of their staff. And I said, look, I taught GED math when I was away. I taught over 50 classes. I said, all I need is just an opportunity. And she said, well, come on in. So I started teaching GED math there. And then in January 2016, I became the director of workforce development for Community Learning Center. It's an amazing organization. And then since then, my career's kind of taken off. Started a program at CareerLink, Suburban Station, with doing reentry work. Started an upskilling program there, teaching people math and reading support so they could get into a credential program like CDL driving or welding or forklift operation. And then after that, took a fellowship with Just Leadership USA in New York and started speaking around the country on reentry and criminal justice and how we can fix the system. Months after that, I became active in the Philadelphia Reentry Coalition and took a position on a committee, heading a committee on the Community Engagement Committee. And then, sure enough, the Attorney General's office called and said, we want you to chair the employment subcommittee for the Pennsylvania Reentry Council. Took that.
Nice.
And then from there, took a seat on the Pennsylvania Workforce Development Board, where I co-chair the Ad Hoc Reentry Council, and also sit on the board of directors for the Coalition on Basic Adult Education, and chair the Prison Literacy Commission. So I believe that what has to happen is that we need to listen. We need to listen to the people that have had this journey, and fortunately, I believe in large parts because the color of my skin and my education, that I get people to listen to me. But when they listen, they're listening to the stories of the people that I've been with that have been black and brown, that have been through the criminal justice system, that have been so impacted by the unfairness of our system. 1 in 3 black males are going to find themselves incarcerated. And one of the fastest growing populations today is our female population. We need to understand that we're in a very broken system. And the days of taking someone inside and locking them away because of a drug charge that they had doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't solve the addiction issues that they have or the drug problems that they have. We need to start really dealing with those problems before people come out and understand some of those problems before if we're ever going to try to really fix the system.
Yeah, that I went to Widener, did a short time at Widener, um, and had to do a thesis. So I did my paper on the recidivism, and I found it. And I'm not saying um, you do a crime, you shouldn't do the time. I'm saying is that I had the hardest time trying to get people to understand that I don't care where you are in a prison. Um, all right, let me backtrack. You will always hear people say that, oh, that doesn't, oh, that has nothing to do with me, or that doesn't, because they're over there. So I had the people. I was trying to get people to understand that. Okay, granted, you may live here, and that crime may have been committed over, in another state, California, Florida, wherever, and you're here, Jersey. So I get that, they don't. But what happens when that person needs to be released? And generally, what happens is they have to find someone that can take them in. So if my closest kin is just so happened to be in the state that I'm in, granted, now you just said it doesn't affect me. It does. So what happens is, if they're not being treated, getting treatment while they're incarcerated, what happens is they come out to society where I am, and then they start doing stuff that they didn't get treated for.
Yeah.
So now I catch the blunt end of it because when they went in, they were addicts. So rather than getting them treatment, you chose to put them in jail. So you put them in jail, their treatment still has not been fixed or helped. So when they come out, they got nothing while they were in there. And that was my biggest issue that I had is not so much putting them in, but giving them something while they're there, because when eventually, unless they're doing life, they're going to come out. And when they come out, they're going to interact amongst us, and if all they know is raping and robbing and killing and stealing, then they're going to do it and then go back in and then,
That's that,
So,
that
yeah.
revolving pipeline. It keeps
that recidivism,
going.
yes, just keeps going.
So one of the biggest challenges that we face is the reality that our unemployment rate in our country is less than 4% in our country. And yet, if you have a criminal background and you're a returning citizen, the unemployment rate is 27%. That's higher than the peak of the Great Depression. So we need to understand that we need to do a better job helping people find that career opportunity, that job, that something that's going to keep them from going back to where they were and the things that maybe sent them down the wrong path. It's a challenge. I think employers are starting to recognize it. I think the government's starting to recognize it. I mean, you saw the First Step Act was recently passed by the federal government, and the president signed it into law, giving relief on a federal level. But that touches so small amount of people. We have 2.3 million people in our country that are incarcerated. 2.3. That's the largest per capita population of people in prison in the entire world by far. No one's even close to us. And the days of locking people away, we have to start putting those aside and saying, okay, how can we help people when they come home, and what do we need to do? And fortunately, we have the tools now. I mean, education and skills training are available. They're there. There's some great agencies that are doing this work, even in Philadelphia, and now we have to connect them. When someone leaves prison, there should be a bridge or something that gets them over to those agencies that can help them. And right now, it's very fragmented, but they're out there. Our agency, which has the Looking Forward Reentry Program at Temple, is one step. but there's so much more that can be done.
So how do you get other people to get more involved to want to help? Because we always talk about this all the time. There are organizations out here. There's tons of them. The thing is, we don't know about them. We don't know how to tap into them, and then when we do, it's like for whatever reason, some places act as if they don't want to help you. I want to sit here and collect the money. I want to do as less as possible, and I really don't want to help. But how do you get people to want to open up their doors and help those that are in need?
There's a lot of places. I mean, there's a lot of places that you can look to. The biggest one in Philadelphia right now is the Philadelphia Reentry Coalition has a website. It's called PhiladelphiaReentryCoalition.org. That website has all of the partnering agencies that do good work in the reentry space in Philadelphia. And when you pull that website up, you get resources, you get calendars of events, you have all the things that you would need if you wanted to get involved and do something, you could do it. But quite honestly, it doesn't take even that. You want to do something, next time you hear of a neighbor or a friend or someone that's coming home, instead of turning your back on them, why don't you ask them, what do you need? I got an extra pair of Timberlands. You want those? You may need them for work. Or, you need a meal? Or how about you need some clothing or a blanket? Why don't we start asking them, what their needs are when they come home? One of the biggest failures in our society right now is that, men and women, when we're away, they lean on religion. I can tell you, I was a white Jewish male inside of a prison, and I had people from all religions that came in and sat in our Jewish services. But I also sat in on the Muslim, on the call to prayer, and I sat in on the Christian services on Sunday. And men and women lean on religion when they're away because it's there, it's available, it's the one safe place that they can go to. And yet, the second they come home, what do?
We drop that.
We don't open our church, and we don't open our church doors up and our temples and our mosques to them, and we need to engage the community and say, you know what, people sometimes make bad choices. That doesn't define who they are. It gives us reason to try to help them so that they can get right and they can get back on their feet. We need to do much more in our communities from the church level and the religious organizations. I'm on the board of Community Forgiveness and Restoration, which is a collective group of churches in Philadelphia that do just that. They welcome men home. As a matter of fact, they don't just meet them when they come home. They're actually inside the prison system up in Phoenix, and they're actually meeting with men inside the walls and talking to them and working with them so that when they come home, they can say, this is where you need to come. You need to come see us, and we're going to help you. And some of them come and find their way into Looking Forward Philadelphia, where we are, and some find other agencies where they're getting the support they need so that they can be successful.
Yeah. We're talking about recidivism. We're talking about reentry. We're talking about assistance, especially with, our young black, brown men, and now the rise of women being incarcerated. And how do we get help? And his agency that does a magnificent, wonderful job, and his life story. Yeah. So yeah. I like his story. I do. Yeah, very. We all have a story. I really don't care too much about anyone's story. The only thing I get irritated about is that when you keep repeating it. Because like I tell everybody, I have my own story. But if you keep repeating it, then I have no sympathy for you. Now if you say, hey, I did that, I done that, I can't hold that against you. Actually, technically, I'm not supposed to be judging at all. But if I see you keep doing the same pattern, of course addicts, they cry so desperately because they want to help. I mean, they want help. They trying to get off or whatever it is, and I get that part. That it's hard. It's not as easy as we tell everybody. Oh, just quit smoking. If you've never been a smoker, you don't know what it's like. It's easy to tell somebody who shoots up all the time and you've never shot up. Oh, just stop. It's easy to tell somebody who's prostituting who has a family to take care of. Oh, go get a job. Where? Like, I don't have, this is all I have. When it comes time to filling out the application, what am I supposed to put down? I'm a streetwalker? Yeah, they're going to literally, they're going to hire me. You know, it's easy to tell people, but if you're not coming with some sort of a remedy or some sort of solution, then, stop trying to point fingers all of the time. I get that part where it's a little difficult, but some things in life really aren't. You just make it as such. And then that's why I have a difficult time trying to extend my hand to help you, especially when I don't see you trying to help, you know. So if you missed it, then Mr. Jeffrey does a whole slew of stuff. And then he also has ties with Temple. And don't tell me, 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 tell me. The
Career Link.
Yeah, Career Link. I'm looking right at the building. Career Link on JFK. Yeah, I'm looking right at the building like, okay, yeah. But yeah, he has ties to those. But yeah, nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So okay. So anything you wanna add on?
Well, hello everybody. Sorry I'm late to the party. My name is Rashawn Howard. I am a financial professional, but it's when you talk about the connection to the community, that's near and dear to my heart. So I have a for-profit and a non-profit. The for-profit is Sean LLC, and the non-profit is the Reach Up program, the Reach Up Foundation, and it's predicated around ending the curse of mediocrity in underserved communities, because too often we have our bar set so low, and it's funny you're talking about people asking for a hand and reaching out, but they're doing the same thing. You know, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, right? So at some point, we have to do something different. So the dream is bigger than me. And the dream is to redefine the word gentrification. And what I mean by that is, gentrification is, enhancing and building up the community from the outside in. Well, let's start doing it from the inside out. Let's start giving the people inside these communities the resources and the tools that they need to better themselves, to get a better way of living, to have a better quality of life, so that way they can put the money back into the community to have it build up the way the city needs it to be built up. So, I'm doing everything I can to assist with that, and I love partnering with people and companies and organizations that also assist with that. And so, yeah, that's just so I'm just here to really give a helping hand and a boat of encouragement, and to really just be hopefully a light in the darkness.
Yeah. So Mr. Jeffries, because I put on social media, but for those that that don't have, we're not Facebook friends. They may not be one of my Instagram friends. How would they get in contact with you? How do they reach you?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The best way to get me, so obviously I'm out there, and the best way to get me in a one-on-one, I go to our orientation workshop every single Tuesday at Temple University. So the program's called Looking Forward. It's for men and women that have either a criminal background or are recently have come home from a facility, and they're looking for some guidance. I only ask one question of you, and that's, do you want to work? Do you want to work not only to better yourself, but maybe to find that career opportunity? When you come in, we'll find you where you are, and we'll provide the resources that you might need. But we're at 1509 Cecil B. Moore, and it's the second floor. It's right off of Broad and Cecil B. Moore, and it's every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays. Tuesday's the best day to go, and here's why. A lot of programs that you go to today, you go into their program, and they say, you know what, I need you to come for 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 12 weeks. My program, you come to our program, and you know what, we want to find out where you are. So we give you a basic needs assessment. What do you need? And we ask those questions. And then we give you an assessment that tells us what your academic level is. Because if you need math and reading support, then we need to get it for you, because I can't get you into a construction job where you got to learn how to use a tape measure and cut wood if you don't know fractions.
Right.
So we give you that support that you need. And then we do a behavioral assessment to find out how you doing. What kind of supports do you need? There's no question that prison is a trauma for everyone, including your families. But we need to find out, how can we support you better? So every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, our staff are there, and they will do whatever they can to help guide you and navigate the return home. You can also reach me via email at Jeffrey Jeffrey .Abramowitz Abramowitz @jevs.org. That's my email address. Or just Google me. Everybody does, but I'm just out there. I also have a radio show, just like yours, but I have a radio show that airs every Wednesday at Philly Cam Radio. It's at 106.5 FM. So we talk reentry, and every week we have Philadelphia and Pennsylvania probation and parole are on, and somebody from the department comes on and tells us what's going on. What do we need to know on the streets? What do we need to know when you come out? What are the hot issues right now? So we talk to them, and they come on and start our show off. And then we always have guests that talk about their successes and stories, and also agencies that are doing really good work in the reentry space right now. So it's an amazing opportunity in the United States today when we talk about reentry and the work that's being done across the country. But to be honest with you, the work that's being done is being done by the people in the weeds in South and Southwest Philly and North Philly, where people really have to get down and they have to get dirty, and they have to go out, and they have to sometimes, get some furniture together for somebody who's moving into an apartment, or, they got to get somebody and pick them up from the street one day because maybe they had a relapse, and you got to get them to a facility. The challenges are for the people that are in the arena, actually doing the work. So I appreciate that, and I'll never forget, as part of my journey, part of my pledge is to stay in contact with that and to be as much as I can, part of the workshops that are going on to help people.
Yeah, we all need help.
Mm-hmm.
All of us. It's interesting how when we say we need help, vast majority of people tease and mock us as if they don't need help. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you own your house, if you have a car, you're making 6-7 figures. You still need help. You need when you get sick, you want somebody to make sure you're okay. Isn't that help? When you hit a bump, you want somebody to make sure you're okay. When you lose a loved one, so don't sit up here and say, I don't need help. Yeah, we all do. I don't care how big it is or how small it is. We all need help. So I like what you're doing, Mr. Jeffrey. I really do. I appreciate, that you are giving back. Because some people, they generally don't. They do something and they branch off and they sort of kind of forget where they come from. And that's not a good look.
It's not a good look.
Yeah.
It's not a good look. And there are many people that go through the system that can really effectuate change and can really have an impact, and they elect to kind of bury it. I put myself out there for just the opposite reason. I think that it's our duty and the challenge when you go through the criminal justice system and you realize there's a wrong, that you need to look at things differently. I gave a speech yesterday. It's kind of crazy that I do these crazy things now, but I was up in Niagara Falls and did a speech up there to the National Association of Correctional Educators, people that do educational work behind the walls. And I kind of tell them my story and where I've been, but I also tell them that, the reality for me is that it would be a shame if I don't speak up and if I don't try to make a change. I spoke in Harlem not long ago, a few months ago, and a gentleman after I spoke got up, and a lot of people in the audience, and I was one of a handful of white people in the audience, and he said, "Mr. A, tell me something. Why you here?" And I've given a lot of thought, and I said, I'm here primarily because I'm white. That's because I have an opportunity to speak for those people that can't speak for themselves and don't have that ability or the chance or the opportunity. So my job is to give people that opportunity. My staff that I've hired on and that work for us, many of them have lived experience. They've gone and traveled down the road. They know what it's like. And that's what it's got to be about. It's got to be about being at the table. There's a great saying. It says that if you're not at the table, you're often being served as the meal. So we need to be at the table at all levels, even when policy is being changed. And I want to be at the table for everybody.
That's a
awesome.
good one. Yeah, we do need more change. It's kind of sad that I was touching on how, most of, when I did my paper at Widener, there's a lot I didn't know, but um, part of the higher recidivism rate was because um, once they go in, it's like, okay, you do your time and that's it. They're not preparing them for when they come out. So if I went in for drugs, 9 times out of 10, most of these people really don't need jail time. They need rehab. That's why they're committing the crimes,
Right.
because they don't know how to stop using. But you put them in prison. I get it, because they did something horrible. Okay, but what happens is you never touched on the issue, and the issue was the substance.
How are
So
you molding them and helping them grow?
yeah, so when
Yeah.
they come out, they like, hey, I feel kind of safe inside, I get the meal, no disrespect, I get the meal, get the cot, and I know what to expect. I'm coming out here in this world, and it's like, ooh, you're a little too fast. You're like, oh, okay, so let me do a crime to go back, and most of them just don't know how to cope after spending so much time inside, Now they got this stuff together, but you didn't prepare me for coming out, so. But I really appreciate Mr. Jeffrey coming on here, sharing, what he does, helping people. I get that thing, you got this white man coming in my neighborhood trying to help the black people, but at some point, I get the color part. I would rather have a black or brown man come in, but at some point when you need help,
Doesn't matter where it comes from.
yeah, it shouldn't matter where the help comes from.
And and the one thing I have to say is, and I get that too, but I live in North Philadelphia. I live in Fishtown. I live in the city, and I wear glasses where there's no color to them. When I see somebody that's on the L, and I don't even own a car anymore. When I take public transportation everywhere, but when I'm on the L and I see somebody that's down in their luck or homeless, I engage them, and it doesn't matter the color of their skin. And I think we all need to wear a little bit different kind of glasses sometimes, and take some of the color issues out of it, and just look at how people can help. What they can do. So yeah,
That's a great point. It's a really good point.
kind of crazy.
Yeah. No, that's a great analogy, though. I like how you utilize your glasses in reference to people do sometimes just need to put on a different pair of shades.
Yeah.
You know.
And I gave a speech yesterday, and I speak a lot, but the speech that I gave yesterday, I was talking about the reality that I see things differently today. And one of the things I do is I see things differently because when I was away, and I did relatively harder time, I was in a federal prison, and when I was away, I saw things differently, and when I came home, I see things differently. One of the things my daughter I journal all the time. My daughter saw in one of the books that the journals that I had, was that I had a hard time with calendars and looking at a calendar, because 5 years is a long time away. So when I got to the facility I was at, I bought 5 years worth of Q-tips. So every day I used a Q-tip, and that when I ran out of Q-tips, I know I was going home. But everybody looks at things differently, and I just have a renewed appreciation for little things. So walking down the street, and again, I was a director of workforce development right across the street here. The majority of the people that we saw were all different kinds, but they all needed something. They needed education. They needed to learn math and reading to get their high school diploma. So I see the world a lot differently now, but I'm flattered to be here, and I appreciate you having me on your show.
I appreciate you being here. One of the things that you missed was I was sharing, there was a gentleman that recently got free from jail, from prison. He spent 28 years for a crime he didn't commit. The alleged victim claimed she dreamt he raped her. So he spent 28 years for a dream. I'm like, yo, no disrespect, but I'm just hoping no one locks me up, because I dreamt I remade Set It Off Part 15. I mean, I dreamt I robbed a couple of banks, but God forbid somebody actually dreamt I did that, and then I get. But one of the things he said upon being released was that what we take for granted, and we do, is freedom, especially when you didn't do the crime. you know, and we do take that for granted. Yeah, we do. We take a lot of things for granted. You know, like Mr. Jeffrey said, when he came home, it was like, oh, I'm looking at life just a little bit differently. Because when you're
Yeah.
behind bars, or when you're incarcerated, you have to go by somebody else's. And actually, the prison system is a totally different world.
It is.
It's a totally different world in its own world. Like their rules are like, okay, we don't have to listen to you. Like we do stuff different in here. You know, you go to bed and you get up whenever. So it's kind of different, but thank God you're home.
Yeah, I'm glad to be home, and I'm glad to be
Yeah.
working with men and women that just need a chance.
Yeah. So, is there anything you wanted to share with us before we let you go? Because I greatly appreciate
Yeah.
you coming
Thank
on
you.
here.
No, I just want to anyone that needs help though know that you can always go to the Career Link Suburban Station. You can find me and my staff at Looking Forward Philadelphia, which is at Temple University, 1509 Cecil B. Moore, second floor, and we're there Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. My staff will always reach out to you, and we definitely will try and provide the services that you need so that you can find that opportunity and you can find that happiness we're talking about.
That's what I'm talking about. That's
There
what
you
I'm
go.
talking about. Well, we gonna take a pause for the cause.
Okay.
Got a guest here, and then, but I gotta bring you, cause you got some stuff you need to be sharing, talking about, getting it out there. But Mr. Jeffrey,
It's an exciting time.
yeah, I so appreciate you coming on here. I really do. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I met him a few years ago, and I can't remember like where it was, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, but real nice guy.
Awesome.
Real doing some very good stuff out here in the community for everyone. It's not a race thing, but I appreciate you coming on here, and stay tuned because we can take a pause for the calls and put some music on, and we'll be right back.
Awesome.